Alf, Caitlin Clark cards? Why are we buying Caitlin Clark cards? Time to talk about it. Explain the reasoning behind prospecting of Caitlin Clark rookie cards. Stick around. What's going on, sports card hobby family? It's another day. It's another sports card video. It might shock many to know that probably the best prospect that you could have been buying over the last 18 months to 2 years is Caitlin Clark, a women's basketball player. I don't think that was on too many people's bingo card going back a couple of years in our hobby. Before I dive in, huge thanks to today's video sponsor, Pristine Auction. Daily auctions, weekly auctions, elite, every 30-day auctions, as well as 10-minute auctions, and there's live auctions as well. Everything is on Pristine, whether it's sports cards, pop culture, all sorts of amazing stuff. Take $10 off your first auction win at Pristine with my promo code down below in the video description. Make sure to check out Pristine Auction. Before we go any further, full disclaimer, I might be buying these cards at the top. These cards might be way overpriced and I'm buying into the FOMO and the hype and all that sort of a thing. So I'm not here to say, oh, everybody should rush out and buy Caitlin Clark cards. That's not what I'm saying at all. All I'm doing is documenting my journey, explaining the why behind I bought into. I'm going to show a couple of cards here that I bought recently, explain why that is. And again, if you agree with me, great. If you don't agree with me, that's okay too. If you go out and want to buy Caitlin Clark cards, okay, I don't care either way. I'm planning on buying more. So if I do have any sort of influence on people to buy them, it doesn't help me at all because I'm trying to buy more of these. And so know that going in. Don't buy Caitlin Clark cards. Do not do it. All right, so up until recently, we mainly had the first Bowman type stuff. You know, we had the college cards. We had the Iowa cards, which sold very, very well. We're going to talk about Caitlin Clark as a player in just a couple minutes, but I want to first talk about the set that I've been buying. I don't own any of her college cards. So we had Select Basketball come out in, was it October? Came out just a couple of months ago. Select WNBA, first year Select. Okay, first year Select for WNBA cards. My first thought when I heard about this is like, hey, I'm not FOMOing into anything. And also Select was ruined years ago. I've got in my mind 2020 Select football where, you know, it's in retail. They've got way too many parallels and all that sort of a thing. But then I watched a Run Good Life video and he was breaking this product and he was actually talking about how there's actually probably gonna be a lot of FOMO around this product, which I think that there has been. But the one thing that James was talking about on there that caught my attention was in part of the FOMO was that it was somewhat of a limited print run. He wasn't saying necessarily that it's like a very limited print run, but in comparison to other sets, just ultra modern sets like what we've been seeing. He did some reverse math and looked at kind of, okay, we're looking at the parallels and we're kind of breaking down what the print run looks like and how many cases are out there. And there's actually not that much. And so I was like, okay, well, let me go and look at the checklist. Let's take a look at the checklist and see how it looks. My expectation is that there's going to be a billion parallels like there is in like football, basketball cards. There's a truckload of parallels. It's like, you know, out of 399, out of 379, out of 349, out of 348, 347, you know, like all the way down to 1, and then there's 21 of ones and all that stuff. Well, I look at this checklist, and yes, if we're looking at Concourse, Premier, Courtside, those are the 3 levels, okay, not 7 levels, there's 3. So we've got Concourse, which of course does have more parallels than the other 2. It's still not bad though. It's not terrible. And actually the picture they use for the Concourse is a good picture. Premier, you go down to Premier, there's less parallels there as options. I don't like the picture and the design as much on that Premier card, but regardless, doesn't matter. And then I got to the Courtside. Now the Courtside silvers, and I always think of Luka Doncic when I think of these Courtside silvers. I did pick up a Courtside silver, and this one was $500. Okay, and just for people that don't know Select, Courtside is the more rare of those 3 options when we're talking about what's in boxes and that sort of a thing. The silvers are not numbered, so there could be a zillion of those. But again, I'm just going based on that checklist and based on past stuff. I like the Courtside silvers. I also just really like the picture that they took. It's kind of like the Luka behind me. You know, it's a step back 3, and this is Caitlin Clark pulling up for 3, doing her thing. So I got that one for $500, and then I was able to get the purple out of 149 for $600. And the one thing, again, typically when you look at these checklists, it's like 149, then 139, then 125, then and then it's like going down. There's not as many numbered cards as I was looking at it. I understand there's 149 of those. I'm not taking away from it. But I looked at that checklist and I was like, man, I can get a hobby box right now of select basketball for $600, or I can get what would be a pretty huge pull out of a hobby box for $600. So I was like, damn, these single prices actually look pretty good. Now, if you go and you look at some of the other ones, you go down the numbers, it gets more expensive for Caitlin Clark, of course. Golden Auctions just recently sold what is now currently her best card for $235,000, $230,000 or something like that. The most expensive Caitlin Clark card ever. And it's the gold vinyl 1 of 1 out of this set. So it's out of this select set. I don't believe the black finite 1 of 1 has been pulled yet, but the gold vinyl 1 of 1 has been pulled. It got a PSA 10, auto grade 10. It's a sticker auto, for crying out loud, and it's sold for over $200,000. And so we're going to get back to kind of why that's important later. Let's first talk about just Caitlin Clark as a player. Before this last season, the last time I watched a WNBA game was probably like 2005, 2006, 2007. Like Lisa Leslie was in the league. Probably the last time I've watched, like 15 plus years. I watched Caitlin Clark at Iowa. Very exciting tournament. If you look at those Iowa games, they matched up pretty well. Some of them even got more TV attendance than the men's NCAA tournament, which is unheard of, absolutely unheard of. And so I was paying attention to Caitlin Clark really towards the end of last season, where she's kind of marching Iowa through the playoffs, through the tournament, and then, of course, lost to South Carolina in the finals against a team. Man, they were completely outgunned against that team. But kind of following that story along, she goes to the Indiana Fever, #1 overall. And then there's a whole storyline around the coach. And I'm just watching what's happening with the WNBA and how they're handling this new young phenom. And they're completely screwing it up. Absolutely, completely screwing it up. When you look at the NBA, I've talked about this on previous videos. When you look at the NBA, really turned a corner when David Stern became commissioner, going back to the early 80s. Magic and Larry come into the league in 1980. They're starting to get some momentum, and then Michael Jordan comes along, of course, in 1984. But the one thing that David Stern did that really changed the culture that the WNBA has not figured out how to do yet is put their superstars on a pedestal. Really brand the hell out of these superstars. Put them on a pedestal. What the WNBA is trying to do right now is, instead of promoting their superstars, it's more of a unionized thing where they don't want to, step on toes. They want to make sure everyone feels special and this, that, or whatever. But what they've got to really do is they've got to get their superstars out into the open. They've got to market these superstars. They've got to help them get into more brand deals. They've really got to work at this, because this league, now that you have Caitlin Clark that's coming to the league, all of a sudden a lot of money is pouring into the WNBA. Salaries are going up. TV rights are now under, they're renegotiating TV rights. There's a lot more money coming to the WNBA. But again, part of why I like buying these cards and why I'm rooting for Caitlin Clark, and again, it's the storyline around how she's been completely mistreated since she got into the league. And she's also handled it really well. She's taken the high road every single time. She's saying all the right things, even though she has been treated like dirt. Absolute dirt. And look, I'm all for the rookies got to come into the league and prove themselves, and that we're not anointing, her the queen of the league in the same fashion that, LeBron James calls himself the king. LeBron's the king, right? Oh, she has completely just, stayed humble and been very appreciative to the past players, current players, superstars, and all that. Didn't really matter. Treated like complete garbage throughout the whole season. And she ended up winning Rookie of the Year somehow in some other dimension. There was supposedly, going to be Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark as getting this award. Angel Reese, not a bad player, good up-and-coming player, not even in the same world as Caitlin Clark as far as what they accomplished in their rookie season. Angel Reese's field goal percentage was like 35%. And she doesn't shoot from outside very much at all. So that tells you exactly how accurate she is underneath the basket. And everyone will talk about double-doubles and getting rebounds. Yeah, she gets her own rebound. I'll give her credit for that. She misses shots very close to the basket, gets her own rebound, puts it back up. There's a lot of putbacks in this and whatever. And so double-doubles, pretty easy to get when you're doing it like that. So Caitlin Clark's game, if you haven't watched her play, she has court vision like nobody else I've seen in the league. She's a rookie. Keep in mind, she's a rookie. And I'm talking about all the vets. all the bets in the league, I've not seen court vision quite like Caitlin Clark. She's like John Stockton meets Jason Kidd meets Magic Johnson on a WNBA court. She gets the rebound, she's running, always moving. Christy Sides, the coach last year, was always trying to set up the half-court offense. Finally, about halfway through the season, just basically was like, all right, get Caitlin Clark the ball, we're going to run, and allowed it to be more of her team. And I understand she's a rookie and she's got to earn it and all of that sort of a thing, but it took way too long for Coach Sides to figure that part out. Now she's out. There's a new coach in that I think is going to be a better fit. So everybody is always talking about her long-range shooting, her three-point shooting, but she is one of the best passers in the WNBA, maybe the best passer in the WNBA as a rookie coming into her second year. So she's not a one-trick pony. She can do a lot of different things. She broke the all-time assist record in a season with about 10 games to go in the season. The all-time, like ever, of the entire league, she broke it as a rookie with about 10 games to go. And she was also averaging, 18, 19 points a game, 17, 18, 19 points a game, somewhere in that range. The future of the WNBA really rests on long-range shooting. Look at the NBA. You have 5 guys. It doesn't matter if they're 6 feet tall or 7'4", Victor Wembanyama, they're out there popping threes. So if you have a sharp shooting WNBA league, kind of in the same vein as what a Caitlin Clark is, kind of a Steph Curry model. You know, a lot of people don't like the NBA and how it's become basically a three-point shooting league, and I totally get that. I think it's nuts that you've got big men that are pulling up from three and all that all the time. I think that's crazy. We don't need to have like 5 out, just to shoot threes. It's just weird. But the WNBA, I think it makes sense to have these sharp shooters, these guards that can really shoot. And if you have kind of these girls that are growing up and they're mimicking a Caitlin Clark, or these sharpshooters coming into the WNBA, it's going to add more attention to the league. And I think this is just kind of the beginning of this. And so when I look around at sports card prospecting, there's pitfalls everywhere. My God, we can talk about quarterbacks. We can talk about major league prospects. We can talk about NBA prospects. Wembanyama looks good, but he hasn't lit the world on fire here starting off his second season. And he's got so many cards. He's got so many autograph cards. And I'm not saying that Caitlin Clark won't have a lot of cards herself, but she stands alone as kind of that main person in her league that's really driving a lot of interest. That's not taken away from the great players that are also Asia Wilson. There's a lot of good players in the WNBA, but she is driving the interest right now. Whether we want to admit that or agree or not, that's just the reality of it. And so kind of bringing this whole thing together, if I'm going to prospect on a player and also a player that I'm rooting for because of the story arc that I told you about with how the league has handled this in such a stupid way with Caitlin Clark, I'm pulling for her. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have some of these cards. Plus, I'm looking at what her cards have done and just kind of the excitement around the cards. And I think that there's actually going to be some upside for these. I could be completely wrong. Prism will come out in January, and I think that it's going to be a really hot product coming out. And from what I've gathered, I haven't seen a checklist yet, I think there's going to be a lot more parallels and stuff than what we see with Select, which I think is kind of a good thing in the sense that it's going to give more people, more collectors an opportunity to get into Caitlin Clark cards. But I think that Prism's going to be a big deal. But again, I kind of like that Select came out now. Prism is going to be popular. I mean, look, those true gold Caitlin Clark Prisms are going to be big cards. Gold vinyl Caitlin Clark cards. We're going to see some big prices out of those cards, given the fact that we just saw a $200K plus sale for the 1-of-1 gold vinyl for a Caitlin Clark card. Yes, for a Caitlin Clark card. Even if we do have a lot of Prism parallels and that sort of a thing, still don't have a lot of sets. Don't have a lot of sets of rookie cards for her. And I don't anticipate that. I don't think Panini is going to have a dozen different WNBA products coming out to where it gets really watered down. So I think it's going to be kind of a fun thing. And again, I don't know what's going to happen with the cards. I hope that nobody else buys them. I hope that they go down and they're really cheap so I can buy more of them at a cheaper price. They are not cheap. A lot of, especially her autograph cards, none of this stuff is cheap, but it's interesting. It's a fun story. I thought, hey, you know what? If I'm going to FOMO into a player, why not jump onto this ride with Caitlin Clark, see what happens next season. All right, friends, let me know in the comments. Are you prospecting on any Caitlin Clark cards? Are you buying some of the other players? That's the one thing that's really interesting. You look at the Caitlin Clark prices and you look at like an Angel Reese, you're talking like a dramatic drop in price. Even Asia Wilson. I've been looking at Asia Wilson, who is the MVP. A lot of her stuff is a fraction of what you would see out of a Caitlin Clark card. So it's an interesting little time for WNBA cards. Let me know, friends. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.